tonight, and we'll get going.
Okay. As we sent out this week, we are talking about fatigue resistance. So Coach Parker, Coach Alice are going to kind of lead us through this. And then Natasha or any other coaches that want to chime in, feel free. And as we're going through, if you have questions, raise your hand, put them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. But we will go ahead and get started here, and I will turn it over to Parker and Alice.
Great. Thank you, Ashton. I'll wait for the presentation to get up.
It is loading.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to start us off, and I'm going to talk about what fatigue resistance even is. And then Parker is kind of going to get into how you then train it. So fatigue resistance, the definition is the ability to maintain pace, power, and form late into a race or long workout. And I mean, just the definition itself kind of tells you why it matters and why it is important, particularly as endurance athletes and as races get longer into 70.3s and then like Ironman. And as this first bullet point says, it really is often the difference maker in long course racing. I can't tell you how many times, athletes can hold their power super solidly for say 3 hours of an Ironman bike. And then that like last 2 hours, 3 hours, they really fade off. And a lot of that is just because they haven't built up fatigue resistance. So as this says, two athletes with the same FTP or pace may finish way differently because one is able to hold on to that power for a significantly longer amount of time, whereas the other one teeters off towards the end. So just reduces that fade in the last bit of races. We can go to the next slide. Okay, and then obviously why we train it so that we don't experience that at the end of races. And I think one key thing to point out is, we do train it. So a lot of athletes I coach and even myself are guilty of wanting to go into workouts feeling super fresh so that like we know we can crush it. But think about a run in a triathlon. You've already swum, you've already biked, you're going in tired. And so like understanding that you can perform in training when you're a little tired, feeling a little fatigued is actually, I think, to be able to perform when you're under fatigue going into it is a really, really, really good indicator of your current fitness. So like oftentimes we're looking to see these incredible improvements in our numbers. But one thing I often look at is say you just start training with me, you do a workout and you get X pace. Well, then 5 weeks later, say we're deep into training, you're pretty tired and you get that same pace. That in itself is still an improvement. You might be like, oh, it's the same pace. I didn't get any better, but you're more tired, you're more fatigued, and you were still able to do it. So I just think like understanding that as a win in itself is huge. So the goal is to close the gap between the training metrics and the actual race execution. So a lot of athletes, including myself and my past, are guilty of having like great training numbers, but then maybe not being able to execute it in a race. And that often is because like you're kind of tired in the end of a race, so you're not executing some of those training numbers. So key takeaway, training fatigue, resistance prepares you to perform when it counts and not just when you're rested. I think one thing before Parker gets into like how we train it and whatnot that I do want to point out is it's really easy to like hear this and be like, okay, I'm just going to make myself tired all the time and then train through it. But that is not the intention. I think one thing I really want to stress is that consistency. I'm like the queen of talking about consistency. Consistency is key, and particularly in training this fatigue resistance, because you need to be able to keep showing up or else you're going to have to take days off and then you're not building this up. So like understanding that listening to your body is hugely important and kind of what that balance is to be able to keep showing up every day. So I'll let Parker get into it and I'll like chime in where I feel necessary, but and then you guys can ask questions obviously at the end.
Yeah, so now moving on to how, thanks Alice, that was very, very good. And now how we train fatigue resistance. Try to back that up, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, fatigue resistance, kind of the name of the game of long distance triathlon, especially half Ironman, full Ironman. And I'm sure you guys have all had workouts like these for long bike workouts where the last half hour or 45 minutes, hour are at race pace. That's a very common example. Or another example is a long run where you have hills at the end of it, or you're finishing off with, miles at marathon race pace, whatever it may be. I know recently I had a training session Natasha gave me, which I think I decided is one of my favorites, is like a 4-hour ride with like the last hour, like broken up into like shorter big gear work, because not only are you getting just the load of, being 4 hours in a ride, you also have that big gear component to it. So you're also training kind of the more muscular side of things. So that's one way we train fatigue resistance, is within the sessions itself, but then also stacking sessions, not necessarily right after each other, but day to day. I'm sure you guys have all had a long run, feeling fresh, and then a long run, the day after a 5-hour ride. And you probably have felt pretty different on those two runs. So that's one example. That's why we try to do the long run the day after, a harder ride on maybe like a Saturday, Sunday. Or for those of you that live in Austin or some other NVDM athletes, you often have that track workout on a Wednesday following a hard Tuesday ride. That being said, like Alice said, we want to be able to train, know how it feels, training on tired legs with fatigue. But there is also something to be said about coming into workouts fresh and not always training fatigue. So that's why we don't have we don't always stack hard days back to back to back to back. We do want some recovery in there. And so you can nail some key sets, because if you're always coming in fatigued, you're not really going to push your upper limit and, your baseline numbers. And so we do want to find a balance, but trying to find the balance between the two is, it's tough, and definitely something that I'm still working on as well. And then, if you want to move on to the next set. So like I mentioned, midweek sets as well, that Tuesday, Wednesday. And then also another component is the strength work. And so that's something especially Coach Harold does a great job with, programming the strength work. And I found that, some of my best races in Ironmans have been when I have felt the strongest in the gym as well. And I'm sure that's not just a coincidence. I've done races where I've really backed off the weight training and just focused on swim, bike, and run. And, that's gone great. But I found that I felt stronger when I'm stronger in the gym. Now, that being said, we don't want to be, lifting 5 days a week. Swim, bike, and run is still the priority. But I do think there is something to be said about maintaining that baseline strength across the board when you're swimming, biking, running, because as Natasha said multiple times, triathlon really is a strength sport. And then one more thing I did kind of want to touch on is not only the swim, bike, run component, but also the nutrition component, because you don't really adapt when we're actually training, it's recovery. And just like we want to practice hitting race pace numbers, race pace watts, race pace at the end of a bike or run, we also want to, practice fueling at the end of a long day. I'm sure you guys have taken a gel, an hour into a session, and a gel, or try to take a gel at the end of a 5-hour ride, and it's pretty different. And so that's why I also try to really, some people, you think, oh, I have 1 hour left in this ride, it's just a cool down, I don't really need to fuel as much. I find that's actually the best time to really hammer the fueling, because when you're 6 hours deep into an Ironman, it's often going to be like, I'm not the flavor fatigue, whatever it may be. Maybe you need different nutrition than when you start at the beginning of the workout or the race. So that's a great time to practice race day nutrition, and your stomach is definitely going to be in a different state than it was at the beginning. So making sure you're not only practicing the, the muscular side of things, the aerobic side of things, but also the gut training. It's a stomach, or it's a muscle as well. And you really want to be able to teach yourself to take on the same, if not even more amounts of carbs and liquids and sodium the deeper you get into a workout or a race, whatever it may be. And also that's really where the adaptations occur, because if you finish a ride feeling on empty, it's just going to be that much longer and that much harder to repair and adapt. And so by finishing the workout more fueled, more topped up on your glycogen stores, and that's less energy your body has to put into repairing and adapting to the stimulus. Next slide. So, that's kind of how we train it and why it's so important. And then, Alice, you want to touch on kind of how we progress, and then, like I mentioned, the feeling as well?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of gone over this. So keys to success, progression, start small, build it. You don't want to overdo it, so you're taking days off. Parker's totally right on the fueling. Like a lot of times I'm saying, the reason you're fading at the back half of an Ironman is fatigue resistance, but it could also be fuel. So like they kind of go hand in hand. And in order to build up your fatigue resistance, you need to be fueling well so that you can challenge your body to keep going when it is tired, because it's not going to keep going well if it is running on empty. And then obviously recovery, like we said, like it's so easy to want to hammer it all the time in order to get better. But if you do that, you're just going to tire yourself out and you're not going to be able to then like reset. And I think that the last point might be the most important one, which is the mindset of it. And that really all does come back to like listening to your body. I think that one thing, like the longer I've been doing this, that I understand is sometimes, and I learned this from Jackie, sometimes you just need to start the activity because you don't really know how your body's going to react. You might start the activity and really surprise yourself, or just need like a little bit longer to warm up and then really surprise yourself. So your brain might be saying like, you're so tired, you can't do this. And then your body is like, I'm actually doing okay. Like, let's go for this. So yes, listen to your body. Don't push through to the point of like injury or hurting yourself, but like understand that you can challenge it. And oftentimes it is your brain kind of talking to you, potentially holding you back. So like just reset on it. Try to start. If it's really bad, sure, back off. But if you're doing all right, keep going. And that's where you're little by little going to build up the ability to keep going when you're feeling kind of crummy. So like that fade that can happen at the back of an Ironman, I think is as much physical often as it is mental. So just, staying in it. So fatigue resistance, but also sort of mental resistance is kind of how I would put that. I actually don't know what the last slide is. Takeaways. Do you want to do this, Parker, or you want me to?
Yeah, sure. Actually, there's what you just said made me think of something that I remembered. I don't know how many years ago, but I was listening to this one podcast and they're talking about the sneakers on rule. And the guy, whatever he was talking about, he's like, whenever I don't want to go for a run, I have this rule and it's called the sneakers on rule. So I'm not allowed to stop before I put my sneakers on. So I always have to put my sneakers on. And then once I put them on, if I still want to stop, I can stop. So I kind of made that same rule for myself. Like, because I find like that, like as long as if I put my shoes on or my bike shoes on, or I jump in the pool and I swim like a few laps, if I still want to really stop after I've taken a few steps or I swim a few laps, then it's like, okay, something must be pretty up, because usually like I'm looking forward to training. So yeah, that mental resiliency and mental toughness. But that just made me think of that sneakers on rule. So
I love that. That's a good one.
But yeah, practical takeaways. Heart rate, RP, in addition to watts and lace pace, latent sessions. Yeah. I'm sure we've all seen heart rate kind of drift at the end of a workout or at the end of a long day. So kind of keep that in mind along with your pace. Don't take one metric really by itself. Always try to use multiple in conjunction with each other. And then, keeping fueling constant. So as Alice and I have both touched on, you may think you're fading because you just don't have the fitness, but more often than not, it's you don't have the carbs. So just try to get in the carbs, sodium, liquid. It could be one of them. It could be all three of them. So just making sure you're staying on top of it. If you do feel yourself fading, do a quick systems check. Have I had a gel in the last 20 minutes? Have I taken in water? Have I had enough sodium? And then lastly, strength and mobility. Harold writes great strength programs. If you guys aren't following that, then you should definitely take a look into it. Like I mentioned, I found some of my best races have been when I've been really following that. And taking the gym work seriously in conjunction with the swim, bike, and running. So I'm not sure if anyone else has any questions. Any of the other coaches want to chime in. But at the end of the day, the Ironman race pace or Ironman numbers really aren't the numbers that you can put out when you're fresh. It's the numbers you can put out when you're fatigued. I forget who said it, but I heard a saying one time that race isn't won by who goes the fastest. It's who slows down the least. So
I love that one. Yeah. And I mean, I'll say it again because this is really my thing, but it all comes down to showing up consistently to be able to do that. Fatigue resistance is not like hammering out 5 days in a row and then being like, I'm going to go do a 5-hour ride on Saturday. I'm really tired. That's going to build up my fatigue resistance. It's showing up week in, week out, not day after day. Days off are fine, but like consistently on top of each other. That's how you're going to build it out throughout a build, not just like a week. Yeah, cool. Any questions or additions, Natasha?
Oh, one more.
Oh,
Yeah, I had one more. Actually, form. I know we kind of touched on that, but fatigue resistance also isn't just about hitting, 7-minute pace at the end of a marathon. It's also about keeping good form. And so something that's I've actually recently tried to focus on, I've actually put a mirror in front of my bike when I'm riding inside. So like when I'm in aero position, making sure I'm not rocking like back side to side when I'm like 4 hours in, or like when I'm running, trying to really focus on 1 or 2 cues. Recently, I've been trying to focus on like relax my quads, engage my glute muscles more, especially at the end of a long run. So you're just trying to keep like little form cues, because holding form at the end of a race is just as much fatigue resistance as it is about hitting numbers. And I know that's something, Alice, you were really working on last year, was your run form in Nice. I remember seeing a bunch of videos on that. And so, it can make, holding good run form, bike form, it can make you go, 5-10 seconds, 10-15 watts more at the same effort.
Yeah, that's a huge point. That's so good, Parker. I love that. Yeah, to this day, I am. I slap like under my stomach, because when I run and I fatigue, I sit back and I like lose control of like my lower abs, which then means I don't have that nice forward lean. So like I love the concept that you're saying, you put a mirror in front of you. It's so good to have a little physical thing that reminds you to pull it back in. So I'll literally, like, as I'm running, hit my lower stomach so that I like kind of suck it in. But like, I know people who will even just like tug their ear to remind them to do something totally not connected to their ear, but to be like, okay, I'm doing that because it's going to remind me to like keep my feet under me and not like, get my knees off when I'm running. So that's a really good point. The form. That's great.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll just add something from my experience when racing is I really went into races really knowing what those cues were. Sometimes we get caught up in the race and we got to fuel and this and that, and then you forget these things that really help keep things together. So what I do is after all sessions, if there's something that I was focusing on about my form that really helped me, I would write it down in a journal, and then leading up into the race, and it just kind of helps me calm my nerves. I'll kind of go over, okay, here are the key 3 form cues for the swim, especially late in the race. What am I going to focus on? Same thing for the bike, same thing for the run. And I just pretty much rip them out as I'm racing, it's kind of to a rhythm where you're just trying to get from like one light post to the next light post. I'm also like, I think one thing I always used to say was like run light, run tall. So staying light on my feet, getting my feet quickly off the ground, but then keeping my posture up. I just remember I was able to hold better speed late into the race. Is that just me, or is there an echo? Does anyone hear that? Okay, it's just an echo on my end. The other side, just to speak from experience again, I've raced probably 30 Ironmans. The biggest difference for me at the end of a marathon, my legs would kind of shut down on me, and that's what would slow me down at the end of the marathon. And the thing that I changed was didn't miss a strength session. That really made a massive difference in muscle recruitment late, and then holding my form together. But outside of that, toughening up my legs to running on some asphalt, because that's what you're going to race on. For some reason, I did not do that pretty much all my career. I was like, I want to stay healthy, which is valid, valid. You want to get to the start line. So I did all my runs on the trail, or on the track, because it was easier on my joints. But as soon as I got to the asphalt, like my legs were not ready for that impact. And as soon as I started to do some long runs on the asphalt, and especially long run workouts where I'm racing at that race pace deep into the workout, my legs were toughened up and I didn't shut down or the thing that slowed me down at the end of the race. So that's something to think about if you guys are not doing that. Yeah. And then the last thing I'm just going to say to all of you, these sessions are extremely challenging. Like I've seen sessions from, other coaches and teams where they do want the athletes to be set up for success. And in that they put all the really hard threshold work at the beginning of the session when you are feeling great. We're putting it at the end of the session when you're not feeling great. And so go easy on yourself if you don't hit it the first time. Figure out, just say you have a build to threshold for 8 minutes and you kind of start to fail 6 minutes in. It's like, okay, check. I'm not ready for that yet. But what I did today has built me up to be ready for it next time. And so you do the next session and you go, Now I did it for 10 minutes. Awesome. And that is improvement in that. So just know what you guys are doing is really hard, but it's exactly that. It's like we want to make sure that you are hitting your full potential come race day and not leaving half of it out, just because we didn't train it to make you feel good during your sessions. It's okay to fail to get the job done come race day.
Yeah, totally. And just to add to that one, that's awesome. Like the sessions where it's a 5-hour ride and at the end we're giving you Ironman effort. We really mean effort. The watts suggestion is there and that's ideal, but think about the effort. Look at your heart rate because that's what you're going to be doing in the race at that time. So like train it. Don't, unless you feel great, don't push it through. You're really trying to get that effort and that heart rate in line there. Like the watts is a good suggestion and maybe you could have done it 4 hours ago, but this is what we're training. So yes, as the slideshow said, the other metrics are really important in sort of this resistance building as well.
Awesome. Anyone else want to add? Anyone have any questions? Easy. We got the point across now. Okay, guys. Yeah, I think that's it. What do we have? What's our topic next week, Ashton? So you can kind
Next week, Mackenzie and I are talking about REDS or RES, which I know is a very hot topic thanks to a
Lionel
very famous
influences everyone,
triathlete.
doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's
Not
racing
just
next
us.
weekend.
Yeah. So it should be really insightful. And I think it's something that you may struggle with that you don't even know it. So that I think we're excited about that one for next week.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that will be really valuable. Parker, is Lionel racing Chattanooga? Is that the one?
No, Augusta.
Augusta.
7.3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Because I think there is a pro race at Chattanooga as well.
Yeah.
Sam Long will be there.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Guys, I hope you have a good week. Coach Allison Parker, thank you so much for leading us. That was really helpful. Ashton, as always, appreciate the presentation. And you guys, if you have any questions, anything didn't make sense, you didn't know right now to ask the right question, then that's why your coach is there. Please message them so we can go into these workouts knowing what we're doing and why we're doing them. Okay. Bye, guys.